The big picture, the $38 trillion hidden danger. The United States government has officially crossed a line that should concern all of us, and honestly terrify us a bit. On October 23, 2025, the U.S. national debt hit $38 trillion for the first time in human history. This is not a joke, and it is definitely not a typo. It is a full $38 trillion. To help you visualize this, let me give you an example. This money is nearly twice the entire economic output of the whole European Union. It is more than 20 times the annual budget of Great Britain. It even means a $500,000 debt burden strapped to the back of every single young American under the age of 18 from the moment they are born. But do you know what the real point to watch out for is? They have absolutely no intention of paying off this debt. They are not going to cut spending, they are not going to raise taxes, and they are not going to grow the economy to get out of this mess. They have a much more sophisticated and dangerous plan. They are going to wipe this debt out instantly through financial wizardry. And when they press that button, the dollars you saved, the bonds in your hands, and the pensions we are supposed to lean on in the future will suddenly vanish. While the government's debt resets to zero, the middle class, meaning us, will once again bear the brunt of it. Why are the numbers growing so fast? Welcome to the Legacy of Money channel. Here we talk about the hidden face of global finance and the dark truths that nobody talks about openly. Before we begin, I would appreciate it if you liked the video and subscribed to the channel. Let's take a look at a few numbers that will surprise you. According to the calculations of the Congressional Budget Office, the American government borrowed exactly $69,713 per second over the past year. Every single second. While you slept peacefully last night and woke up, the debt grew by more than $6 million. Even since you started watching this video, hundreds of thousands of dollars have been added. This is not something happening slowly. We are literally going full speed toward a logical impossibility. The debt was $37 trillion in August 2025. Just 2 months later, it became $38 trillion, meaning they borrowed $1 trillion in 60 days. Leaving aside the pandemic period, this is the fastest borrowing record in American history. Furthermore, the Budget Office states that this debt will surpass $40 trillion in 2027. In other words, we are adding $10 trillion to the debt every 5 years. The strange part is, the economy is seemingly doing well right now. Unemployment is low and corporations are making money. If this is the situation during good times, what will happen when a major crisis hits in the future? Unemployment skyrockets and tax revenues vanish. That is exactly when logic will completely collapse. The real trap, the debt spiral. The real crisis is hiding right inside the budget, in plain sight. Interest payments on the debt have now become the fastest growing expense of the state. In 2025, the U.S. covered more than $1 trillion just in interest from its budget. This is not the principal amount of the debt, just the interest. This money is far more than the massive defense spending or the health budget, meaning 1 out of every $5 from the taxes people pay does not return as roads, schools, hospitals, or defense. It goes directly into the pockets of bondholders as interest. It is just like paying only the minimum amount on a credit card, whose debt keeps growing constantly. Except this card belongs to the biggest state in the world, and if that card blows up, it will be the end of the entire global system. Right now, the average interest rate on the debt is 3.38%. A few years ago, it was 1.58%. As interest rates increase, the borrowing cost of the state rises too. With a massive debt of $38 trillion, a 1% increase in interest means an extra $380 billion in annual payments. The central bank Fed is raising interest rates to reduce inflation, but they are hitting their own budget. They borrow again just to cover the interest on the old debt. The interest rate rises as they borrow, and they borrow more as the interest rate jumps. This is called a debt spiral, and once you get into it, recovering is almost impossible. The government's hidden trump card: printing money and modern monetary theory. So, what is the government relying on? They have a nuclear option in their hands: debt monetization, turning debt into money. The system is very uncomplicated, but the consequences are painful. When the state cannot find loans in the market, it heads straight to the central bank, Fed. The Fed creates money out of nothing digitally and buys the state's bonds. The state grabs the cash it needs to spend, the Fed takes the bonds, and the amount of money in the market rises by just as much. In short, we call this printing money. Isn't it perfect for the government? Free money. They neither raise taxes nor reduce spending. The funny part is, since the money the Fed earns goes back to the state at the end of the year anyway, the state is actually paying interest to itself. It is basically taking it from its left pocket and moving it to its right pocket. They tested this method heavily during the 2008 crisis and the pandemic under the name of quantitative easing. Now, they are quietly continuing billions of dollars in purchases every month. This situation is based on an approach called modern monetary theory, MMT, which has taken control of Washington. This theory argues that a state that creates its own money never goes bankrupt, because when the debt comes to the door, it runs the printing press, creates the money, and settles the account. For those of us raised on classical economics, this might sound like nonsense, because we were all taught that debt must be paid with real money. But this new generation of economists argues that as long as inflation does not explode, the debt limit is irrelevant. Who is stealing the money in our pockets? But there is a very important point that these MMT defenders do not tell you. Turning debt into money does not destroy it. It merely passes the penalty on to everyone holding that money. When money is constantly pumped into the market, more money starts chasing the exact same goods and services. And what does that mean? Inflation. In other words, your money loses value. The state gets rid of its debt, but the price of that debt is the stealthy reduction of the value of the money in your hand. This is the most legal and unquestionable robbery mechanism in history. Another method the state uses to cover up this theft is strategic asset revaluation. For example, the U.S. has 210,000 bitcoins in its pocket, seized from criminals. At the current price, it is worth $21 billion. Nothing compared to the debt. But if the state comes out one day in the future and says, I made Bitcoin a reserve asset and I am calculating it at $500,000 per coin in my budget, it suddenly creates $105 billion in value on paper. They did a similar thing with gold in 1934 during the Great Depression. They increased the price of gold by 69% overnight and relieved the bucket. Today they are still displaying thousands of tons of gold in the vault far below the current market price at $42 an ounce. If they announce tomorrow that they are raising this to $10,000, trillions of dollars of imaginary assets will instantly appear in the budget. The books will say our situation is great, but in reality they will have just played with numbers. The world's reaction and the end of the dollar. Of course, the rest of the states are not stupid either. they see this method. Foreign countries hold $7 trillion worth of U.S. bonds. As America devalues the money, these countries notice they are being robbed. Because of this, a serious de-dollarization trend has started in the world. China reduced its U.S. bond holdings by billions of dollars. Russia dropped the dollar completely. Saudi Arabia started accepting Chinese yuan while selling petrol. BRICS countries, China, India, Russia, Brazil, etc., are now doing almost all of their trade with each other using their own local currencies without the dollar. These countries are running away from the dollar and constantly collecting gold, not just for the sake of political friction, but entirely to secure themselves economically. On top of that, with the electric vehicle revolution, the demand for petrol will also decrease in the coming years. The moment petrol is not sold in dollars, and countries do not need the dollar in international trade, billions of dollars around the world will flood back to America. That is exactly when inflation will double or triple. Conclusion: the Great Repricing is at the doors. Friends, what I am talking about is not a complot theory. It is an operational process clearly shown in the reports of states and central banks. In the next 18 months, we will watch together how the Fed will increase its speed of collecting bonds from the market. The media will present this to you as a great step for market continuity, but secretly they will be systematically destroying the value of money. When the debt hits $40 trillion in 2027, the state will have two paths ahead of it. They will either not pay the debts and completely destroy the country and global finance, or they will push the printing press and melt the money with inflation. The choice has already been made anyway. Everything is ready, the timeline is running smoothly, and every single cent you hold in your pocket is condemned to pay this bill. Now the real question is, are you going to grasp this system early and protect yourself, or are you going to wake up one morning, see your accumulated money melt away, and be shocked? The Great Repricing process has already begun. Take great care of yourselves.